He constructed dinosaurs, aliens, and war epics. But mention films that influenced him, and Spielberg becomes a child again. For Spielberg, filmmaking was not a job. It was a vocation. And like all consummate storytellers, his begins with someone else's. The frames that nurtured him, the voices that schooled him in listening, and above all, the films that made him believe. From war operas to ghost stories, from cosmic adventures to small-town fantasies, Spielberg's top choices tell us more about him than an interview ever could. You can fabricate a resume, but can you counterfeit influence? They are not trend choices. They are blueprints, movies that reverberate throughout his own work. Sometimes softly, sometimes undeniably. And once you see what's on his list, his whole career becomes clearer. Some filmmakers speak of legacy. Spielberg resides within it. And here comes Steven Spielberg listing his 6 favorite films. And if you watch to the end, you'll find the one movie Spielberg has deemed perfect, the one that he said made him grab a camera in the first place. Number 6, Lawrence of Arabia, 1962. Some movies don't just inspire directors, they haunt them. For Spielberg, Lawrence of Arabia wasn't about inspiration, it was about obsession. He saw it for the first time when he was 16, and he didn't exit the theater the same. It was the first time I knew what a movie could be. From the seemingly infinite desert shots to the razor-sharp dissolves, David Lean had painted a canvas Spielberg would be drawn back to for the remainder of his life. He said it altered his brain, how he structured scenes, how he paced stories, how he conceived a silence. When he filmed Saving Private Ryan, Munich, and War Horse, you can sense Lean in every sweeping frame. The opening title, In Complete Silence? A straight lift from Lawrence. The deep focus photography and sheer scale? Lean again. But it wasn't all visuals. What blew Spielberg away was the paradox. By a hero who wasn't heroic. By a war epic about inner disintegration. Lean didn't simply tell you what a man did. He told you who he was becoming. Spielberg declared it his desert island film. And when Columbia restored the movie in the late 80s, Spielberg personally supervised it himself. That's how deep it goes. Each time he revisits it, Spielberg has the same to say. It still has something to teach him. Number 5, 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. Spielberg never feigned to comprehend it. That's why he idolized it. Kubrick didn't clarify, he taunted. He didn't mentor, he challenged. It blew my mind. And it still does every time. In Spielberg's universe of emotion and narrative, Star 2001 Star was an icy, distant star. Lovely, calculated, unattainable. And he couldn't look away. The interminable silences, the ballet of machinery, the notion that space isn't thrilling, but desolately empty. Spielberg has said he saw it over and over again just to feel small. Not in wonder at the universe, but in wonder at what movies could accomplish. Stanley taught us that film doesn't have to explain itself. It just has to be true to itself. And although their styles conflicted, Kubrick icy, Spielberg sunny, they became unlikely partners. Kubrick consulted Spielberg about a die before he passed away, then left the project to him. And Spielberg agreed, because you don't refuse your oracle. In Close Encounters, you sense Star 2001 Star in the wonder at the alien. In Minority Report, in the shiny technology. In A.I. in the atmosphere itself. But Spielberg never attempted to emulate Kubrick. He let him revolve. There are directors you learn from. Others you pursue. Number 4, A Guy Named Joe, 1943. Prior to aliens, dinosaurs, or soldiers on Omaha Beach, there was a guy named Joe. It wasn't epic. It wasn't flashy. But to Spielberg, it was the first time a movie made him feel anything. It hit me like a thunderbolt. I saw it on television when I was young, and I bawled my eyes out. The tale? An irresponsible pilot dies in battle, and then comes back as a ghost to mentor a younger man. Romantic. Unusual. Just the sort of tale Spielberg would devote his entire career pursuing. Spielberg as a kid did not have the vocabulary for what affected him, but A Guy Named Joe left him with a sensation, sorrow and optimism, sacrifice and redemption, all presented in supernatural magic. He never forgot. Years on, he recreated it as Always, 1989. It was not a project. It was an ode. I didn't want to top it. I just wanted to experience it again. Critics were unkind, but Spielberg couldn't have cared less. That movie wasn't for them. It was for the child who stayed up late at night, eyes fixed on the screen, watching Spencer Tracy bid farewell. Because some films don't instruct you in how to direct, but in why. And Spielberg never lost that. Number 3, Fantasia, 1940. Before Spielberg knew about plot, character, or dialogue, he knew about sound. And Fantasia didn't just amuse him, it owned him. He once described it as if the screen opened and swallowed him up. To him, Fantasia wasn't a film, it was a hallucination. Disney's vision of combining classical music with drawn animation produced pure emotion with no boundaries. And for a young Spielberg, it was the first time film seemed like magic. He said it altered how he listened to film, learning that rhythm could inform story, that imagery could dance without language. When you watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you don't just see aliens, you hear Fantasia. The 5-note message, the soaring, quivering score, it's Disney through Spielberg. Even E.T.'s bike ride has that same scope, light, musical, sublime. Spielberg was never afraid to say that Fantasia had taught him that storytelling isn't always what characters do. It's what the music is. Years on, he still talks of it in wonder. He never analyzes it. He simply recalls it sweeping over him. And if you ask him how to make a film for children and adults simultaneously, he won't say script. He'll say Fantasia. Because sometimes the craziest ideas, the ones that no one completely gets at first, end up being the ones that endure. Number 2, The Godfather, 1972. Spielberg once admitted that when he saw The Godfather, he thought, I'll never be that good. It wasn't envy of box office success, it was envy of craft. He believed no one had ever used shadows and silence better than Coppola in that film. Don't be surprised that Schindler's List owes its tone to The Godfather. The quiet dread, the moral corrosion, the portrait of power unraveling. Even Munich is infused with the chill, calculating atmosphere of that world. What Spielberg admired was how The Godfather forced him to slow down. He ceased to try and impress and began to tell the truth, frame by frame. Because sometimes the greatest compliment a director can pay another is this: envy. Number 1, It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. Not a blockbuster, not a technical tour de force, just a man, a town, a moment. And for Spielberg, it was all. It's the movie that made me believe in stories. Not in Hollywood, not in cinema, stories, he once stated. He wasn't analyzing it when he first saw it. He was holding his breath. George Bailey's collapse wasn't a plot twist to him. It was an emotional thing. Spielberg himself later confessed he cried harder than he ever had before screen. What Frank Capra did was quietly clever. No extraterrestrials, no mobsters, just life breaking down and remaking itself. That understated bravery, the power to discover scale in the mundane, became Spielberg's fixation. You find it in E.T., where a suburban boy finds the universe in his own backyard. In Catch Me If You Can, where the absence of a father sounds louder than any police car. Even in The Fabelmans, which could just as well be Spielberg murmuring, "This is my George Bailey." Capra taught him that hope isn't foolish. Hope is courageous. Critics have been wont to decry Spielberg's sentimentality, but that sentiment had an origin, and it was Bedford Falls. For Capra did not merely create a film. He left us a philosophy, a commitment to the idea that small lives have worth, that small sacrifices are heard, and that storytelling is not just about fleeing. It's about coming back. And that's all Spielberg has ever tried to do. And there it is, the truth behind the lens. 6 movies that didn't merely define Spielberg's career, but his essence. Not the easiest choices, not the most obvious, but the ones that lingered in theme, tone, and sensation. Because despite all his box office milestones, Spielberg never went after spectacle. He went after feeling, wonder, fear, redemption. The subtle kind of power you don't even realize until you see the end credits. Now you know what fueled him. The question is, what's your inspiration? What movie on this list had the most meaning for you?